You're listening to 15 Minutes, where we feature community leaders sharing what the rest of us should know but likely don't.
Hello, everyone. Michael Renfro here. I'm the host of 15 Minutes, where we talk with top-notch law firms and lawyers about what it takes to grow a successful law firm. This episode is brought to you by Gladiator Law Marketing, where we deliver tailor-made services to help you accomplish your objectives and maximize your potential growth. To have a successful marketing campaign and make sure you're getting the best ROI, your law firm needs to have a better website. It also needs to have the better content, more extensive content. At Gladiator Law Marketing, we use artificial intelligence along with machine learning and decades, literally actually close to a century now, over a century now, of experience to outperform the competition. To learn more, go to gladiatorlawmarketing.com or schedule a free consultation. You can also send an email directly to me. That's simply Michael, Michael, at gladiatorlawmarketing.com. That should be on the screen, but for those who do not have visuals, that's spelled exactly as those words are normally spelled, or typically, I should say, gladiatorlawmarketing.com. Anyway, today's guest is Owen McGrann. Owen, I'm going to let you introduce yourself here in just a moment, but nice to have you on the show. Very, very glad that you came on and allowed us to interview you and see what your past is all about and see what you're doing now.
Well, cool. Thanks so much for having me.
No, it was great. I appreciate it. I know we haven't met yet until just now, so that's always kind of fun in the interview type process where somebody's interviewing someone else and
you have no idea what you're getting here.
Yeah, no idea what you're getting. You have no idea who right? It's fun though. So we'll make it quick and painful. Okay. So let's just start off with the obvious, and I'm sure you have a good one here. Like everybody, it's funny because I tell stories all the time, and everybody's like, "You have so many stories." I'm like, actually, everybody has great stories. It's just whether or not they're willing to share them. So,
well, I mean, that's the thing. If people actually paid attention to their lives, they would realize that they could tell stories for ages, right? And
right.
Frankly, life would be a lot more interesting if we recognized our own stories because we participated in it a little bit more.
It's also where our experience and character all come from is our own stories, right? I mean, what are you without them?
That's right. So, yeah, as you say, I'm Owen. I am an attorney in Pittsburgh. I've been practicing for over a decade, but that's the boring shit. I spent 7-8 years in big law.
Like for a big firm, you mean?
Yeah, so
big
big firms, and burnt myself out doing it.
Heard that story.
But I got actually very ill, almost died twice. And
from the overload?
No, I got independently ill. In the wake of that, decided that I couldn't go back to the way that I was.
That was no
working.
Longer conducive, and where you're, I get it.
Right. And I was one of those idiots who became a lawyer because I wanted to help people. Right. And it turns out that in big law firms, you're helping big companies make more and more money, or defend against things that aren't necessarily the most savory, kind of thing. So,
right.
Getting as sick as I was actually a bit of a blessing because it forced me to take a step back, walk away from the firm that I was with, and sort of recalibrate where I am. So now, what I do, I own a very small shop. I do business consultancy. So I work with a lot of startups, small businesses that
are literally just, they don't even understand how harsh business is, probably.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, one of my first clients was a automotive repair shop. And the first time I met with them, they said, "So do you think we should incorporate?" I said, "You've been in business for 20 years. You should have done that 20 years ago." Yeah. Yes. It's shocking that you haven't been sued already. It's nice taking, some of the more sophisticated ways that big business, handles problems and helping smaller folks, leverage the same kind of, tactics and knowledge.
Let me just say, I don't mean to interrupt, but that's actually, obviously it's not the first time I've heard the story. And I think it's because people, with good intentions go into a situation and we, it's just like we said at the beginning, you really don't know what you're getting into until you actually work for a company. I've said this just recently. You don't know a person until you shake their hand, no matter how well you know them online, until you actually give them that bear hug, especially if you're, becoming friends with them. I had a discussion about internet friends, right? So it's all about that, that getting to know you truly phase. And sometimes people, they get to know what they got themselves into, and they're like, "This isn't really what wasn't what I intended my life to be."
No, and part of the problem if you work for big firms is by the time you start realizing it, you're already making pretty decent money, right? And you've got the student loans, and it becomes very difficult to disentangle yourself from,
By that time, as they say, they have their claws into you, right?
Right. At that point,
it's hard to let go because
exactly. You've got a mortgage based on the salary that you were making, and you've got a family, and you can't just suddenly say, I'm out. I've got no plan, but I'm out.
Right.
So it's been really pretty fascinating getting into opening my own shop because I'm a startup too. Right.
Helping start. So, how long how old is the firm now?
We're just over 3 years. So we opened in March,
so you're not startup anymore, but you've made it past quite a few of the early storms.
We are more than stable at this point. We're doing very well. So
congratulations.
Thank you. So
well, here, let me I'm going to get right into it then, because I love that you did what you did, because that gives us a much better idea of you before we go into these standard questions, and I think that, quite frankly, I think that's refreshing. Hopefully, some of the guests in the future will see this and take that opportunity.
As you said, stories are the best way to get across anything, right? So
they really are. It's how, just on my boss probably will hate me saying this, but from a sales perspective, and what I've always told him, because I hate to look at things as tactics. I just look, I've always been a natural salesman and been doing it since I was 14, right? So 36 years now. And it's funny because the things that I always did naturally later on when I would read books, there was two big ones that I always did just inherently without ever thinking about it. It's just who I was. And it was tell stories and give analogies, because it made sense to me. And those are considered two huge sales tactics, but I don't look at them that way, because to me, it allows you, it's the best way to relay your message to someone so that they fully understand it.
It's a way to talk to somebody that invites them in, right?
Yep. And not programmed either.
Yeah, because people don't frankly care what you're selling, right? That's if you lead with that, it never works. It has to be inviting somebody into a discussion about ways that you're able to help them, right? Because they don't care about you.
No,
at least not at first.
No, it's funny you're saying these things, because I have preached my whole life that attorneys are nothing more than the most prestigious salespeople on the planet.
We are glorified wait staff.
You're not. I will not go that far, sir. I know. I've talked to you a little bit before, and I know you have a great sense of humor. I get it. To me, anybody in this world, I used to have a saying that I started back in '98. Life's a pitch, and then you buy. And because everybody, and all the way, if you want to get biblical with it, all the way back to Jesus getting upset in the market, it was all because it's about buying and selling, and that's all it's become. Like, you're either doing one or the other, from getting your wife, right, to getting a job. And people are like, well, getting a job. What about the other? I'm like, they're selling you a job. You're selling yourself. You're both at the table selling.
Right. So both of you are hoping for a match. Right?
Exactly. How did you get started then? Let me ask you that. How did I know where you are now, but how did you come to the point where you're like, I want to be an attorney?
Well, so my dad's an attorney.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Easy.
I grew up with it. He's a litigator. He works for large,
same practice areas.
Same practice areas initially, right? So when I first started, I was in litigation. I did super fun cases, and worked on cases all the way up to the Supreme Court. Stuff that most people think would be like an ideal kind of thing, and the sort of secret that a lot of people don't want to tell you is it doesn't matter how prestigious it is if you don't actually enjoy that particular work, or you don't believe in what you're doing. It's just fancier window dressing for the same nonsense.
You have to have, I'll go into it in a minute, but you really do have to believe. And that comes, I mean, it's so funny. I know we keep doing sales, but I've always said that sales and law are so damn similar, because if you do not absolutely believe in what you're selling to someone, they will not hear the conviction, and you will not pass that on to them. And as this, like, you guys have to believe what you're pushing, particularly litigators. Like, the confidence sitting in front of a judge and jury is the highest confidence that you guys have to exhibit, I would imagine.
Well, both confidence, but also vulnerability in it, right? Because
not cockiness. Let me be very clear. Not cockiness.
That's right.
You don't want to piss off those people. You want to be confident, but again, yes, like you said, humbling and forget it. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, my first job out of law school, I clerked for a judge, and it was the best job I'll ever have. But the thing that I learned there was the attorneys who came in, and if the judge said, "Well, what about this?" Right? And if the attorney said, "Your Honor, I don't know." It's a very difficult question. There's no clear authority on this. I think that you can make a cogent argument like I'm making. I think you can make a cogent argument like my opponent is making. Here's why I think we still win, but it's not a clear thing. If you hear that and you're the one in the middle trying to decide it, say, this person's being honest with me, right? This person is trying to convey to me
confidence and honesty,
without bias, right? And sales is really no different in that regard. And attorneys are terrible. Sales is a dirty word for most attorneys.
Oh, I know.
And
that's why when I say this, most attorneys are like, "We're not salesmen." I'm like, "Okay, man,
no, yeah, bullshit."
All you're doing is convincing people of your position. That is exactly what a salesman does her entire life.
There are all kinds of things that attorneys, we're very bad about doing for ourselves. We don't think that we're in sales. Really? How else are you getting clients, right? I mean, it's like...
I didn't even touch that side of it, man. I wasn't even looking, like, I'm only talking about the litigation.
Right, and I mean, it's like...
literally, you have to... Yes.
We can call it business development, right? If that makes us feel better about it.
But they're still sales. Deals to you. They're deals.
It's sales. We're also terrible business people because we think that we're somehow above business. We are professionals. If you have a 401k matching program for your employees, you're a goddamn business, right? If you've got policies,
you're now a businessman.
Right. You're running a business, an actual normal business. And the fact that we don't act like it makes us run really terrible businesses, right? Terrible business to work in, to own, and to work for.
I'm sending this video out to every potential. You don't understand. You literally, dude, you sound like me and my CEO, Adam Draper, talking to one another, because we're like, attorneys don't understand that once they take on this role, they now become a businessman. And at some point, if they get big enough, they have to leave the attorney role altogether and straight become the business.
That's right. I had a post about this on LinkedIn last week where, like some of the things that are
share that with me, because I don't know if we're on LinkedIn, if we've met on there, but I am on LinkedIn. It's just Michael Renfro Gladiator.
I'll forward those over to you. Thank you. There are some dead giveaways that a law firm doesn't think of themselves as a business, right? The first one is, let's make the rainmaker the general or the managing partner, right? Why are you taking your best salesperson out of the field? Number one, do you really think that somebody who's really good at sales is really good at operations? No, almost never. And three, do you think the rainmaker is really going to stop making rain? Do you think he's going to stop or she's going to stop and run a business? No, you're just going to have a business without a leader. There are just so many different.
They're the key. They're the face. And then you allow someone else to do the operations. That they could even be CEO if you want to make them look like it, and then have COO run everything.
But you need an ops person, right?
Exactly. That was my point. The OO takes care of everything and runs the business.
They're just so many dysfunctions to the way that attorneys run businesses, right? I could go on about this for days, but I think
no. Hey man, listen. If you go off script on something like this, I've already scratched off like 8 questions, bro. I'm just telling you right now. Like I'd rather have this discussion because, it is your 15 minutes to shine, but it's also your 15 minutes to show why. You have obviously. Let me just say this, Owen, with all due respect. 3 years, 10 years with a larger, and you went through all that, and now 3 years on your own. We all know that you have made it past the mark. That, and if anything fails now, it's probably going to be yes on you, but the success that you have had is also up to this point on you.
Well,
you know what I mean? But I don't sure. believe you'll see. And if you did, I think it would only be a hiccup. I don't think you would see actual failure. You might see hiccups like we all do, and you'll recover and retrace and fix it. But the fact that you look at it from this perspective going in. My owner did a paper on ROI for attorneys because it's so different than ROI for any. It is ROI still.
It is,
but it's different ROI when you're looking at it from an attorney standpoint, or from a law firm. Let's just say law firm in that sense. When you're running a law firm, you really have to look at that differently. After you share that, I'll share that link with you. I think you'll.
Yeah,
quite frankly, you will absolutely. Love he did a white paper on law firm ROI, law firm marketing ROI, which is just awesome.
I'm sure you've heard this from attorneys before. I didn't go to law school to do math, right? First of all, I think that's really devaluing what most attorneys do, because if you're doing any sort of litigation, you're doing math, right? But
and you have to.
There are so many attorneys who just don't understand the numbers of a business, right? It's not even, we're not talking, forensic, accounting or something like that.
They just don't want to take the time, because if they only gave it 30 seconds, they'd understand it's all common sense anyway. And I don't mean that in a rude way. No, I mean that the bulb would just click. I've watched it happen so many times on the phone with him. That's why I say that.
I know, just basic things, basic KPIs, or knowing what a KPI is to begin with, getting a sense of, rather than just throwing money at it, at a marketing campaign, right? Are you doing any tracking on the ROI, right? Are you A/B testing anything on Facebook? Is there any sort of sense, or are you just throwing mud against the wall and hoping something sticks?
Do you know where every dollar of that campaign goes? Because something I love to point out to people is that a lot of agencies, and I can truly say that we don't, but they just give, like, if you go to them for SEO, right, and say, hey, can you do SEO for me for business law in Pittsburgh, right? And they're like, okay, it's going to cost you $3,500. And you'd be surprised, bro, how many attorneys will not ask, what does that get me?
How's that allocated?
What am I getting for $3,500? All they care about is what most of these agencies say after. This is what it'll take to get you number one. And this is not to gloat gladiator, but I think one of the important things that matters, and what attorneys do like about us, and I know you would dig it, everything's itemized. You see how many words you're getting. And we meet with people monthly to show them the deliverables. That's why our attorneys are more, how do you say, it was our founder's whole concept. They're more empowered. They have the understanding of where every dollar goes and how it affects. Because if you're doing that too, and I know you're going to get this because it's exactly what you're talking about, you have the tracking. If you know exactly where every dollar is, then you can say, okay, this is the vertical that is not working in the campaign. Period.
Yeah. Well,
and then you fix it. And what was your biggest turning point? Understanding that, just out of curiosity, where did you go from being, Owen the attorney, to now what it feels like you're not at this one only. And what I mean by that is you're not solely a business. I can see that. But when did you take both seats and really, take hold of that?
There was a point.
And I mean, when did it click? I know it was before you opened the business, I believe.
So I mean, it clicked for me. So I had an organ transplant in January 2020. So right before COVID hit.
Oh man.
And there was it was a good thing. I'm alive, right? I mean,
no. I know it's just that would be a stressful time.
It was a hell of a time to become immunocompromised. I can tell you that, because COVID was 2 months away. but there's a period where I was, recovering. I was learning to walk again. I was, learning to,
having to do a lot of things again, I imagine.
And I wasn't able to practice as much as I normally was. And so I started taking a closer look at the finances of the business and how things were being allocated. And I realized that I had no idea what money was going to really. I was just spending money.
That was the light bulb there.
And
the start of it.
Exactly. And I had that moment. I said, if I saw one of my clients do this, I would ream them out. Right? I was like, what are you doing? Right. And there was that sort of, as you say, light bulb moment where it's like, well, if I believe in myself enough to give that advice to my clients,
take it myself.
I better take it myself.
Yeah, I love it, man. And we hear that all the time.
Right. And so at that point, it was, a lesson in analytics and, getting into how all of these things were being played out, allocated, and, what was returning income.
I have to say, I love it because you really nailed a point there. I think ever since the firm, the entire world has understood that attorneys, even though they say 6,500 retainer, you've got to show where every dollar for every minute went, right? Mm-hmm. And if you didn't cover 6,500, then you got to give some back. A lot of people don't take that into consideration, that's not guaranteed that the attorney gets all that, depending on the case, right? An hour spent. Right. So to me, it's no different. Like any attorney knows that, but yet they will go and sign this agreement that just has really no responsibility, and that's not the word I'm looking for, but there's no ownership of what I'm delivering to you other than I'm going to do SEO for you.
Right. It's a black box to most attorneys. I in the same way that I advise any of my business clients, if you're buying something, know what you're buying, right? Right. Read the contract, understand what services you're purchasing, if you're bringing on a vendor to do something.
Yeah, I mean, that's all this applies to I love that, because all this applies to the same dudes that you're helping, the same companies.
Yep.
Women, men, whoever, the same folks. It's really,
and that was one of the things that it's having to do this for myself has made me a much better attorney for my clients, because it's no longer theoretical, right? It is something that I've lived in, that I have lost money on because I did stupid shit, and
wait, no, I'm sorry, you got to segue. What was your biggest stupid shit? What was your biggest pitfall that and let me be clear on this, not just your biggest, but the one that gave you, because I don't look at anything bad anymore. I really don't. Everything that bad happens I have learned that it's the catalyst to a greatest moment and a greater moment in the future. But for you, what was the biggest one that gave you the most?
So I will preface this by saying I agree with you. There's a line in Ulysses by James Joyce where it says, men of genius make no mistakes. All their errors are volitional, and they are the portals of discovery, right? If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough.
Exactly. Right? It's the only way you learn.
If you're not pushing the boundaries, if you're not uncomfortable a little bit, you're never going to grow and get bigger or more efficient or, get better at what you're doing. The biggest mistake that I made in marketing was in 2019, believing that print marketing was still the way to go. And I signed a 3-year contract for a local magazine. And luckily it wasn't a huge amount of money, but it was one of those ones where every month
it's still hitting the bank and you're like, this is getting me nowhere.
I didn't get a single lead from that.
Not one in the entire, and that just ended, right? If I'm correct, that like you finally just got out from under that horrible
I threw a party when that last it was taken out. It was.
I have to ask, are you married with kids?
I am married, no kids yet.
No kids. Okay, so then you and the wife had a blast when you finally got. I get it.
We did. So, things like, figuring out where people actually show up now, it turns out it's not in a magazine for a rich neighborhood.
No.
Stupid.
No, it's everything, man, everything. If anybody who doubts it is just not somehow been woken up to the reality of it with the sheer numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't even know that people even get a paper anymore, other than what's funny. I asked around because, I still see the papers at the corner store, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've bought papers. Do you want to know why I've bought newspapers in the last 4 years. You're going to love this. Never wants to read them. Fire starters. We've always believed that we had puppies, right? And so we believe doing a paper with a band around it, and they get scared of the paper. I mean, they've only probably been smacked on the butt like twice with it, but I had to have a paper. I didn't, because I don't have any. I went out and had to get these newspapers, but not for reading them. They were literally, and I imagine and also bedding for different animals. So my point being that very useful, yes, mind you, but not for the same purposes that we once had them.
I last month I had to get alternative service on a quiet title action, and the way you do that is you publish it in a newspaper. And I was just like, this is the most useless thing. Like, no, there's no possible way that this actually is going to effectuate any sort of service, right? Nobody reads a newspaper anymore.
And do they not allow, I'm assuming that this is a by the books kind of thing. Do they not allow, have they not gone to the point of allowing electronic submissions in the same manner to work in the same way, since there's actually readership there?
Not in the back county of Pennsylvania. You would think Pennsylvania
would be one of the ones that's a little more, I don't even want to try to be political. I just think you would think Pennsylvania would be a little more ahead when it comes to technology, just due to who they are as a state.
Typically we are. But I mean, this is a
but it's law. It's law. It's always slower. We know that.
Yeah, I mean, we were 15 years behind everybody else. I talk to people about automation, and they're just like, "Well, you have to write your email yourself." It's like, the hell I do.
So let me ask you this: who, because if I'm hearing about you've had almost 15 years now of who's your mentor, and who? How do you say, what's the best piece of advice that person, why would you call them their mentor? What was the one thing that they really changed for you? So
I mentioned that right out of law school, I clerked. The judge that I clerked for.
It was him.
He's pretty old now, but he's still alive. And I still talk with him. He was the sort of dean of Pennsylvania trial court judges in the state.
Okay.
He wrote all the discovery rules and did all that kind of stuff. And, he was one of those sort of old school genteel guys who never got too high or too low on anything and just sort of did his thing. And, I remember, the biggest lesson that I took from that year of clerking was the combination of what he told me, but also seeing it play out in front of me, which was, there's no one way to be an attorney, right? What you see on TV or in movies, that doesn't really happen. Most attorneys aren't like that. If they are, they're not being themselves.
Right.
And, it took me until I had my own firm to really understand that if I'm to be successful, I just got to be myself, right? And that means, I have a practice where with every new business client that I have, I also do estate planning.
Right.
With every new business client I have, within the first 2 or 3 meetings, I wear a hoodie to a meeting. Because if they don't want to deal with that, if they need somebody who wears, a button-up, a shirt every time, we're not going to get along well enough for us to have a long-term relationship, right? And so, I will curse, within, the first meeting, usually, because I do. That's just how I talk.
You did it with me within the first, I think, 10 sentences that we met each other this morning, which are like, right. I just got to tell you, dude, I really like you. I mean, we have, you don't understand. Like, it's just one of those where
likewise, the feeling's mutual. And,
but it was this guy though that really,
where he said,
is there even one single piece of advice that you can boil it down to that hits you the most? I mean, truly, when you talk about a guy like that,
I mean, he was one of those people.
Be yourself. That was it, right?
He said, be yourself and do your homework, right? I remember him. This is the one thing that stuck with me, where he really said, hard work is hard. There's no shortcut. You can't sort of half-ass it. the hard work is hard work, and you just got to do it.
All in or nothing.
You're right. And he said it's worth it, right? If you do the hard work once, you're going to know how to do it better next time, and it's not going to be as hard, but you've got to do it at least once.
Well, it also it pays your dues, so to speak. I mean,
right.
I've always, my father said to me something, to me years ago, and it's always stuck with me, but nothing ever comes easy or for free. Even when they say it's free, there's a cost you're not seeing yet. I'm not talking about marketing free. I'm just talking about anything that's free. A great example of that is if you win a car, right? You still got to pay taxes on the thing. And all of a sudden you have this big bill that you were not anticipating.
Right. Most people think of free in terms of money, right?
Right.
But, time is the only non-fungible good that we have.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
You can't trade time. It is the only pegged commodity that we have. And if you say, like, all I have to do is give my time, frankly, I'd rather give my money.
I thank you very much for giving me your time today. I do mean that.
Of course. Because my time is not anything I can ever get back. I can always go make more money.
Right.
Right.
Good point. I've lost money three times in my life. All of it. So.
Right. So, there's always a cost, as you say, whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's relationships with people. There's, and it really pays to be more intentional about the way that we choose to do these things. And I know that's become a buzzword, being intentional about stuff, but
I wouldn't even know, man. I don't listen to buzz factors.
But I mean, like, be aware of the shit that you're doing. Choose to do it.
Aware of your surroundings is something I constantly preach. And when I say that, some people, they don't take it for what I mean it for. And what I mean by that is they're like, well, I understand what's going on. I was like, when I say that, I'm really talking deeper, like, read the people in the room, read the room itself, read, what's going on. Like, think about all of it and how it, and not overanalyzing it in that sense, but just know where you are. It helps you control this. When I used to just,
Oh yeah.
So I really started taking hold of that. Think before you talk. And when you actually take the time to think before you speak, it's usually because you have an idea of truly your surroundings and what's going on and have something to contribute.
Well, and there's also the benefit of when you shut up, you realize that the people around you are really fascinating.
Yes, it is a give and take.
It's so often, we get caught up in our own heads and believing that what we have to say is the most important thing that's going to come out. Attorneys are very, very bad about this, right? Because we're the smartest boy in the room every single time.
You have to be.
And the thing is, we're often not, even if we pretend to be, right? So, every once in a while, just shut the fuck up. Right? Listen to people. You're going to learn a lot.
Giving you a virtual pound, man.
It's, the monologue doesn't need to be a monologue.
No, it doesn't. That actually gives me truly a great segue for my next question for you. The people that know you, your close network of friends, what would you say would be the things that they would call your strange habits, the things that make you a little different, your quirks, if you will?
So I have raging ADHD, right? So
that's why we get along now. It all makes sense.
When you mentioned earlier that you naturally talk in analogies and storytelling, I was like, he's a brother. So I very frequently will just randomly start talking about something.
Tangents is what my family
people
calls
have
it.
No idea what I'm talking about, right? And eventually it does circle back. There's a connection.
Always,
right? It always connects, but
But sometimes it takes 5 stories for me, and they're like, "Dude, are you telling another story within this story? Within this story?" I'm sorry, it's just hilarious.
Right? It's like, no, I'm a walking Zen cone, right? It's So
that's the one.
So a lot of people who know me professionally, think that I'm a very straightforward, I've got it, and I tell the thing. When I'm around my people, it is not like that. And it can appear that I am just totally all over the place. And my close friends know that at some point there's going to be a payoff, right? That it does cohere. It might just take a little bit of time to get there.
I will share this because I'm a very transparent person. But first of all, we're gonna have some talks, brother. I don't meet someone who literally clones like almost everything I say, but just in the only difference is your industry is law and mine is selling law. So it's really not even, but no, I mean that. But I've got just a few more. These are quick and these are the ones that are just kind of fun. But I really, man, quite frankly, one of my biggest beliefs in this world that I've come to is that I do not believe in mistakes, number one, right? But I take it further because I do not believe in coincidences. I do not believe that. I believe everything literally happens the way it's supposed to. And I know some people argue that. And here's what I tell them. I'll give you a quick example of me, and then I'm going to ask you these 5 questions. I think of life. I know you've heard of GTA, right? Everybody knows GTA. So I think of life like a sandbox video game, right? And what I mean by that is, if you look at that, that is very programmed and everything happens specifically the way it's supposed to. However, you can be a flounder and sit in there and never actually push the game forward and go to a checkpoint. And you can literally just run around that city forever. Your entire time on GTA forever cannot push a story forward. Or you can take the leap and decide, I'm going to run all these missions. I'm going to run all this and push all the story to a closure, but it always leads you to the next point perfectly, but yet randomly. And I tell people they just don't get it, but it's chaotic destiny. It sounds like a crazy term, but it is what it is. You can go with the chaos or you can find your path. That's the choice that you have.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, who would you say is the colleagues that I know that's the one, but maybe other than the judge who I know is no longer active, who would you say in the active legal realm is probably one of the ones that you respect most in the industry? So
this might not make me a whole lot of friends with my attorney colleagues, but I don't hang out with a lot of attorneys. My best friends are chemists and musicians and actors and educators, right? I don't have a whole lot to learn from people who are just like me. There are people in the industry that I really respect. Some who are no longer practicing.
Moved on.
Right. Marshall Lichty, who runs.
What was the name?
Marshall Lichty.
Lichty.
He runs JDHD, which is a group that's designed for lawyers with ADHD. Right?
I was about to say I was like, it's got all but one. I was like, is it somehow related? That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. Wendy Witt.
I already I'm going to reach out to him. I'll tell you that. That's for sure. He sounds like if he's somebody you respect and he's doing that, I can only imagine he and I might have a good conversation.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people out there who are doing really interesting things.
Beyond law.
The people in law that interest me are the ones who are poking and prodding at it and trying to get it to do something differently.
Right. Manipulate it, if you will, or I'd rather say persuade it. I don't like manipulation. I don't like that word. Persuade it to see it from a different angle or use it in a different way.
Yeah, my firm has moved mostly at this point, probably 75% or so to flat fee billing.
So what was that? I'm sorry.
Flat fee.
Okay. Got it.
Right. So we're moving away from.
I've heard of that. I've seen a lot of lawyers doing that now where they're like, this doesn't matter if I go 10 hours or if I go 250 hours, you're good.
Right. And it gives, it gives clients some certainty as far as, okay, here's the cost, right?
Right.
If I do my job and I scope it properly, it gives me all of the motivation to be efficient, right? In a way that billable hours do not.
It's more restrictive. When I look back at billable hours, they seem more restrictive because it just seems seems more restrictive when you think about what you can do for a client nowadays.
The thing that I hate, and I don't use that word lightly, the thing that I hate about billable hours is that there's an inherent conflict of interest between myself and my client doing it, because my client wants me to be efficient, right? The less time that I spend on something, the less money that they spend. Me, on the other hand, I want to be thorough, right? I want to do as much work on this as possible. I think flat fee billing aligns client and attorney better, right? Here's what needs to be done. Here's a price that we agree on. Let's go.
It's funny. Toyota introduced that into the sales concept of like, taking bargaining out of it, so that the bargaining no longer played a piece of the value of the vehicle. And that's essentially, it's really the same concept for your services. It's just a service, right?
That's
it does it, like you say, it evens the playing field, so nobody's feeling like one's getting something that the other one shouldn't. Nobody feels like they're getting more or less than what they should be getting. I like that. Yeah, I would go into it more, but I recently had to use that for a situation personally, and I was like, wow, that makes it a lot easier too, because I just don't have to worry about how much more could this go up if it goes here, if it goes there, and all those other things that
And for me, and you'll get this because you have ADHD. I was terrible at keeping track of every 6 minutes of my life.
Oh God, yeah.
Right. So
I can't even
keeping track of my billable time, it was a disaster. Right. Yeah, so flat fees.
I can imagine.
Flat fees are a godsend.
All right, that's cool. I like that. What's your favorite podcast, or do you have one?
So I really love Akimbo by Seth Godin.
Cool.
I used to listen to a lot more podcasts. I find that so in addition to running the firm, practicing law, being married, having 2 dogs, I'm also writing a novel. So I don't have a whole lot of time
extra.
And so I've sort of been, narrowing down the extraneous exactly, right?
It's out.
So yeah.
I get it, man. I get it. I it's funny because I do one, but I think another friend of mine who does videos and YouTube and stuff, he said it best. He's like, man, I make them, I don't watch them. It's like I don't have, if I'm making them, how do I possibly have time to go out there and do all the content and make all this stuff that I'm doing, and then still have time to sit down and watch it?
And there's also, when you do something all the time, I mean, you
get tired of it.
Well, I used to play music in a bunch of bands when I was in my 20s, right?
Instrument?
Mostly guitar. I can also do bass, drums. I can fake a lot.
Keyboard a little bit, I bet.
A little bit, yeah.
Yep.
And that was a lot of fun. But now when I listen to music, I can't just listen to music, right? I hear the bits, and it's like, oh, that's an interesting arrangement.
Yeah, you're literally taking it apart,
right? And you're like, that was like
how did he do that?
Right, exactly. And so it's analytical rather than just like, this is amazing.
That's movies for me. I do not. I am a huge. I never actually directed, mind you, but I studied and did everything but actually direct, write screenplay, the whole works. And I still may do it one day, because I think that I would enjoy now, because watching them, even my favorite movies, Owen, my most dear movies, I'm like, oh my God. I see the art of it. I see the art of it, but then I also at the same time shred them, because I'm like, wow, you guys were capable of so much more even back then. It's just, it like you say, it becomes 100% analytical rather than sitting and just enjoying it. So,
yeah. You see the
I get it. Yeah. Here's a easy one for you, because I'm assuming this is probably not law based, just getting to know you. But what's your favorite conference?
So as I mentioned, I'm in Pittsburgh, so we are home to the National Furry Convention.
The National Furry?
Yeah.
What I won't.
So the furries are people who dress up in animal costumes.
Oh, okay. Because I was thinking it might be a plush or something like that I was just unaware of, that had gotten really popular, like the Kirby's or whatever the.
Yeah, no. So
okay, so a furry is someone who dresses head to toe. like bunny
look it up
costume,
sometime.
bear. No, please. After
it's
this,
because I'll never forget. I think it was probably 2011, 2012, when I was still working downtown. I walked around during lunch, and I was just like, "What the hell is going on?" They're an interesting group. Take a look.
like that. Let me just say that only sounds like fun, lighthearted time. I don't see anybody going there to be a negative Nilly, if you will, or I'm sure there's always some. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
That's just the way it is. But it seems like most people are there to be lighthearted and have a good time.
Yeah, and there are other activities too.
That's cool. I'll have to check. I will look it up. You've got me there. I'm definitely going to look it up. So last one, and this one is really specific to law. And what I mean by that is when with what you're practicing, what's your favorite tool? And that might be software, but what's your favorite tool? And if it's not a piece of software, what's your favorite SaaS, software as a service, or piece of software that you rely on most?
So the piece of software that changed the way that I practice law is Lawmatics.
Lawmatics. Yep, familiar with them.
Yeah, it's a CRM, but specifically for attorneys. Right. And it just does amazing stuff.
Tracking your case, I imagine, is one of the biggest things you like about the way it does.
Tracking the case, you can feed all of your marketing analytics into it too to get reports on how all of that's going. It's a really robust program. The problem for people like us is you get into it and there's so much.
It could be
overwhelming.
Yeah, I knew exactly where you were going.
And
God, where do I start?
Right, you go down 30 different rabbit holes, and your wife comes and gets you at 3 a.m. You look like a coked up raccoon, and you're like, so it's one of those things where there are people out there who can help you with it.
So what since you said it, what would be your best advice for someone who's first, who is just learning Lawmatics but doesn't want to, be a coked out rabbit hole kind of guy?
Yeah. So
I mean, what would be your advice to him?
Don't try to do everything at once. Pick one thing, whether it's putting together a single email drip campaign for somebody who fills out a form on your website.
You can do that so it's a full CRM when you say full,
it is fully operational. That's you can run newsletters and stuff through that.
Everything. That's why. Okay, now that it becomes even more clear. When I was thinking it had some stripped down concepts of it since it was for law, but now I see it's more. It's a CRM for law firm.
Right,
business.
And it's got you can do scheduling through it. There's like it's something like Calendly, and
I use Pipedrive, which to me has become my favorite now. Over all the other big ones.
Yeah.
Does it, just out of curiosity, one of the things I like about Pipedrive that changed the game for me is that it had columns of each deal and where they are in the process, because each column is a separate process. So in a flash, I could literally see my entire pipeline, hence the name Pipedrive.
Right. So it's you can set up various pipelines within Lawmatics, and
you can see everything. You can pretty much see everything with a little bit of scrolling, I imagine, but
that's
keep
right.
Scrolling down.
And you can do
everything.
customized reporting and stuff like that. It's it's fantastic.
So that is your number one tool / software.
Yeah,
that's all.
It can be a full-time job though.
I get it. And I would almost say that I'll just say this only for me as software. So you have your advice, and I'm just throwing this out there. But if I were to use it, the first thing I would probably do is go somewhere like Udemy, or one of these places that may have courses where I wouldn't want to watch the course. Don't get me wrong, but those are usually set up very well, so I can just go in there and cross-reference and get straight to something that I need. And that way have it to pull up.
Absolutely. One of the things that Lawmatics does really well is they have an onboarding where they'll have somebody
a lot of videos actually.
A person will sit there in it with you and show you how to do things.
Like literally screen sharing type situation where you together. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. So they do a really good, I think they recognize that, at first I don't think they did that. And they realized that people were just overwhelmed with the possibility. So
right. It's like jumping into, I remember the first time that I jumped into Sugar back in the day for sales. It was, a lot of people tried to, I don't know if you know, but Sugar is an open source CRM. And of course, a lot of folks tried to take that and, because it's open source, rewrite it for law.
Right.
Those attempts did not work out very well. I'll just tell you that. Well, listen, man, it has been absolutely wonderful. I went past the hour. I do apologize, but the conversation was just there. On a personal note, I will tell you this. I will absolutely be reaching out. I hope to find you, or maybe you'll end up hitting me first, but I will find you on LinkedIn. There's some things I want to share, but I don't want to take up your time anymore. And some of those things, the world just doesn't need to know, Owen.
That is true. That is true. I am a professional secret keeper, so
exactly. But I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I believe the way that this all goes is I think links to all that stuff will be in the description to your firm and other things like that. So, and trust me, after this conversation, I will only have the highest praise. It really was an honor to meet you, and I can only say this is how it, everything truly happens for a reason. It just continues to slap me in the face.
Yeah,
that way.
Indeed. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right. I'll see you.
Thanks for listening to 15 Minutes. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.